grab your surfboards, throw on a wetsuit, and get ready to join us at a haunted water park. Would you ever swim in the deep, knowing that somewhere just feet beneath you is a drowned girl? No, I wouldn't, Jason. Easy hypothetical question. And then we take a look at the story of a family who believes that they are living in a haunted house. But as these quote-unquote hauntings continue to escalate, as they start to become mind-bending nightmares, this family realizes something else is in their house. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio.
I'm all freaked out. Actually, I'm a lot freaked out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. Hope you guys had an awesome weekend. Hope you guys had tons of fun doing whatever you were doing. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, so first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Everyone get on your feet and give it up for Saul and Riley. Woohoo! Yay! Wee! Haha! Yeah, they're all running on into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, having a blast. Saul and Riley, they came out to see me at the Oregon Ghost Conference. That was in Seaside, Oregon. What was that, a month ago? Something like that. Had a lot of fun. I love meeting you guys in person. It's a blast. I hope you guys can get to one of these ghost conferences, and if not, I hope you guys find something cool to do in your neck of the woods. Maybe a UFO conference or a Bigfoot festival. There's so much out there. If you truly love the paranormal and you want more of it, see what's happening around your area. And who knows? Maybe you can create one. Maybe I'm giving you this homework assignment. You have to somehow hold a Bigfoot festival. You're like, what? I guess, okay. You start putting up flyers. It says date, and there's a couple question marks. You're like, I don't know. I was just told to do this. Saul and Riley, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to toss you guys the keys to the Jason Jalopy. Everyone climb on board as they drive us out of Dead Rabbit Command all the way down to California. Nice leisurely car ride down to sunny California. Specifically, we're headed to San Dimas, California. The only reason I know that city is from Bill and Ted. I didn't even know it was actually a real place. I just know that they went to San Dimas High School. San Dimas is a real place, and in San Dimas is a water park, and that's where we're at right now. We walk into the water park. It's a lot of fun. Kids having fun, adults having fun. Some pretty cool things here. Water slides. I mean, at the very least, right? That's the least you could do if you have a water park. So have some sort of slide. Raging Waters Los Angeles is the name of this place. One of the rides they have is called the Dark Hole. Not super alluring, right? Dark Hole. They have another ride called the Mass Grave. They have a ride called the Dark Hole. It's a pitch black tube. So you get in it, you get in the tube, and I guess you're probably on like a little foam thingy, and you fly through. Imagine, we've all probably been on a water slide. I never have, actually. I have never been down a giant water slide. They're too spooky. They're basically too much like a roller coaster. But this one, it's a long tube. Maybe not. Maybe it's only like 5 feet. They didn't actually say how long it was. I would hope it would be long to get my money's worth. It's this tube that has no holes in it, except for the hole you go. You're like, you just see a solid wall in front of you. There's only one hole. There's a hole that goes in and a hole that comes out. But after that, it's just pitch dark, pitch black inside. There's no windows or cutouts that you could look out. So you're flying down this tube at 26 miles an hour in the pitch darkness. Now, some people would love that. I'm not one of them. But maybe you'll go there. But if you do go to Raging Waters Los Angeles, I would stay away from Wave Cove. It's a very popular attraction. It's a wave pool. So it's this giant... Well, okay, maybe I shouldn't say the word pool. We'll get into that in a second, but It's a swimming area, to be legally specific. It's a swimming area that has a wave maker that every 12 minutes it makes 3-foot tall waves. The reason why this place has quite the reputation, I found this on the Shadowlands.net, and this story just really spirals out. It's very interesting, all the details we found about this. Shadowlands.net says, listen, here's the thing with Wave Cove. At night, security is walking around the area to keep out people who are trying to get some free swimming, probably skinny dipping too. They probably catch skinny dippers now and then. But when they're near Wave Cove, security guards for years, decades really at this point, have experienced the following phenomenon. They'd hear the sounds of footsteps echo through the empty area. No one else is there right then, they're just security guard. It says that late at night when you're near Wave Cove, phones will start to ring. Now, I'm curious if they have some places have those security phones or those phones you can call for information. I don't think there's payphones set up there anymore. I wonder if that's what's ringing. What would be even more terrifying, because if we look at it, the way the sentence is structured, it says that phones will start ringing. I'm wondering if the security guards' cell phones start ringing. And when they pick it up, there's no one on the other line. It's one thing to be walking through a reportedly haunted water park, in this area specifically, and then there's a pay phone, or there's some security phone over by the corn dog hut, and that phone starts ringing, and you walk over, you're like, what? Who'd be calling me? These are internal phones. Who'd be calling me? You walk over, you pick up that phone. You'd be like, oh, the line's dead. It's creepy, right? You would be peeing your pants because you know this place is haunted. You know that's one of the signs that you answer a phone. Supposedly the ghost is calling. What if, though, it's your cell phone? That would be way worse. Because then it really is trying to get a hold of you. You're a security guard, you got your cell phone on you, you're walking around Wave Cove. Oh, you look at your phone. Unknown number. Hello? Yeah, that's a little more creepy. It's not much creepier. It's still the voices of the damned that trying to reach out to you. I think it'd be creepy. I wouldn't want a ghost to have my number. Because then you're at your house and you're like, wake up at 3 a.m, the spookiest time. You're like, what? Sounds of footsteps, phones ringing late at night. Also, when they're near Wave Cove, they will hear a little girl. The voice of a little girl asking for help. And again, sometimes it's the terminology that's used in these stories. It's one thing, again, if you're walking through Wave Cove and you heard a little girl screaming for help. I'm drowning, help me! Oh, somebody help me, get me! And you run over into the Wave Cove, you run over to the swimming area and the water is completely still and the voice stops. Creepy. Yes, 100% creepy. Now imagine you're a security guard, you're walking through a park, you're by Wave Cove and you hear, do you know where my parents are? And you look around and there's nobody there. It's, again, the terminology is super important with these types of stories. Yelling could make you think that this is a residual haunting, that the spirits have actually left the area. It's just this recording of the day this young girl died. The Shadowlands.net and all these websites are saying a young girl died at Wave Cove. Could be residual haunting. If you're walking and you hear a question like that, then that little girl is next to you. Her actual soul is still trapped in the area. And the other thing that the security, at a certain point, I mean, how many of these are like, well, I am on the verge between madness and the infinite, but, the pay's good. At what point do you just quit? At what point I could go be a security guard in a non-haunted place? Also, when the security guards are near the food court, they will hear something, an undefined entity. They'll hear something calling out their names. So I found this on the Shadowlands.net and I go, okay, this is how I always approach these stories. Fascinating stuff. Is it real? What can we verify about the story? So I kept digging. In 2016, there's a website called hauntedplaces.org, which is really cool. You can look in your local area. There's a ton of haunted places. Some cities and regions are more filled out than others, but it's self-reported haunted places. A lot of them are things that are very famously haunted, and some of them may just be a local legend. But I was able to find Raging Waters LA, or Raging Waters San Dimas is what it used to be called. Back in 2016, there was a comment posted by a former security guard. He said he used to work at the Raging Waters Los Angeles water park. He goes, he worked there as security. He said the stories were at least 20 years old. These stories have been going around about this particular haunting for decades. He goes, you would feel a very unnerving paranormal presence when you were in the food court area. I was actually trying to pull up a map of where the food court was in conjunction to Wave Cove, but he goes, that was really his experience. He didn't talk about hearing the girl. He didn't mention his phone ringing. But he goes, there was something weird about the food court area. Another person who grew up in the area named Lauren Pettis, she posted on hauntedplaces.org, and she said, grew up in the area, and we went there a lot. We went to Raging Waters a lot. She goes, there was one summer in particular, when I was a little girl, that I went to Wave Cove. She goes, I'm in Wave Cove, and here's the thing, it's packed. It's packed. It's like almost shoulder to shoulder people in there. You have people on life rafts, you have people kind of swimming around, and those waves are just going, and you're kind of riding them up and down. The further you are away from them, the more shallow the waves are. It's a safer area. But she goes, the place was completely packed. She goes, I ended up on a raft that floated towards the deep end. So now I'm in this huge gaggle of adults, and all of a sudden, somebody pushes me off the raft. And she goes, I didn't see who pushed me, but it felt like somebody straight up pushed me off my raft, and now I'm underwater. And in a panic, your natural reaction is to swim up to where the surface of the water is. You get some air. She goes, I remember I fell off my raft. I was pushed off my raft. I end up underwater, and I start to swim towards the surface. She goes, I can't get out. She goes, there's so many people packed into this area that I could not burst through them. I couldn't make my little head pop through them all and get another gasp of air. She goes, there's so many people, there's so many rafts. She sees a man swimming, right, kind of treading water, and she grabs onto his leg and begins to claw her way up. She's like pulling herself up on his shorts. She's climbing up him, and she finally gets her head out of the water, takes a deep breath, and something pulled her back under the water. And she said this went on and on. She goes, I would get up, swim up a bit, get up, finally find my way through some adults, poke my head up, but every time I jumped up to take a breath, I would feel something grab onto me and yank me back underwater. And that, first off, just the fear and the shock about you're in a situation where you can die, where you can clearly die. That plus 3 foot tall waves coming at you in a packed pool where every time she tries to pop her head up, she has to struggle. It's an immense effort to kind of push these rafts and push these people away or climb up them or whatever. And then when she finally doesn't get her head above water, something grabs onto her and yanks her down. She said, here's the thing, I was so disoriented that I didn't realize that if I simply swam in one direction, I would get to the shallow end, and there was less people down there. She goes, I was so disoriented, I barely knew what up was, and I'm running out of air, and I'm running out of stamina. I am going to drown. She's just completely exhausted. But eventually she does get out. A ghost, and we're like, wow, a ghost left that comment? Eventually she is able to catch a breath of fresh air, and then another one, and whatever was pulling her down didn't do it again, and she makes her way out of Wave Cove in a panic. And she says in that comment, when she's writing this up, she goes, it was very sad that I found out later that a little girl died around the same time. Not like 3 hours later, but around that same time. It was summertime when she went out there. A little girl died, and that kind of broke her heart. Because that could have been her. And even if you weren't in Wave Cove, you'd probably still feel bad the little kid died. So I keep digging. It's really interesting, right? Now we're thinking, is there some entity in Wave Cove? Because remember, we have something calling their voices in the food court, and then we have the voice of this little girl near Wave Cove, and now we have this experience of someone saying that she felt like something kept pulling her under the water. Is there a phenomenon going on at Raging Waters? Is there something wrong with this Wave Cove? I kept looking, though, because we want to see. Not like the story wouldn't be any less interesting. It's already pretty creepy, right? But I go, is there anything behind this? I ended up looking at a list on Wikipedia of water park related accidents and injuries. Trust me, man, if you want to get paranoid, read that. I'll put it in the show notes. It was just constantly people going down water slides and bonking their head, people going down water slides and flying off of them in various directions. Then every so often a guy lost his arm because his lighter fell in between like the gears of this water park roller coaster type thing, and he reached his arm in and it ripped his arm off. Can you imagine? I mean, he would be in shock. But could you imagine you're walking around, you got your shorts on, a little bit of sunscreen on your nose, you're eating a corn dog, and then you look over and a guy's all, just blood shooting everywhere. It's all, you're trying to hide your corn dog, don't get blood on it. I mean, like, imagine going to a water park and watching a man get his arm ripped off. Horrible. A lot of that. People flying off of roller coasters, because some of these places are more like a theme park, dying. One woman was flung off of a ride. She flew all the way and landed on a parked car in the parking lot. Right? Again, that's not a way that you expected your watery vacation to end. Obviously, she got the worst of it. But you're walking out of the water park, you're like, kids, do you have fun? They're like, yay! And then you get to the car and there's just like a woman on top. Well, okay, here's the thing. I don't think she was out there for hours. I don't think the people were like, oh, I wonder where she went. Oh, well. They just left it. They just left the body. I'm sure before that family got back to their car, medics were there. But then it'd be even weirder because you get back to your car and you're like, what tarnation? Look at this. And there's like, your windshield's busted. There's a human indentation on the hood. I read all through this Wikipedia. I didn't read through it, but I definitely read through all the Raging Water stuff. No mention of anyone diving at Wave Cove. An injury. They had like an injury or two. And then I found it. This is what I love about doing this show, because otherwise I would just read a cool ghost story and go, that's creepy. July 1985. So this might have been that same summer when Lauren Pettis was there. July 1985. Sharon Williams of Pomona, California. She's an 8-year-old girl. They're visiting the water park. She's there with her family, and she's in Wave Cove. And it's packed. There's a lot of people in there. And the family loses sight of her. Like, they no longer see her in the water, and they're looking, Sharon! Sharon! And they're kind of looking around, they don't see her, and the panic starts to rise. They tell the lifeguards, we can't find our kid. She's in Wave Cove. They might have been in there with her, but anyways, they lost sight of her. So the lifeguards cleared the cove. They told everyone to beat it, and everyone's jumping out and stuff like that. And then, sure enough, that is when they see the body of Sharon Williams. She was like right next to the big wave machine. She could have got pulled over by the momentum of how the wave machine works. It could have been something else. But we did have a young girl die there. The reason why I found 2 articles that were related to a lawsuit that was filed by her family. And it's really, really interesting. I wasn't able to find out how this lawsuit ended. But they were suing Raging Waters because they said it doesn't meet the regulations of a swimming pool. Like, there are certain things that a swimming pool needs. Is a depth marker, so you know how deep is too deep for you. You need to have a certain number of lifeguards. I don't know if that's based on the size of the pool, like the physical size of the pool or the people in the pool, but you have to have a certain amount of lifeguards, which Wave Cove did not have that right amount of lifeguards. They did not have the depth marking, and they also, a swimming pool in California also has to have a minimum level of clarity. You have to be able to look in the water and see, probably to the bottom is probably how it is. It can't be cloudy. If it's cloudy, you gotta, clean it out. So they were suing the water park for wrongful death, and they were saying it didn't meet these criterias. They were actually negligent in running a swimming pool. The California State Department of Health Services, they were quoted in the Los Angeles Times. They go, "Oh, Wave Cove is not a swimming pool. It is a swimming area. A swimming pool has to have a certain number of lifeguards, depth markers, and a certain level of clarity. But it's not a swimming pool. It's a swimming area. So they don't have to meet those minimum safety rules." So I don't know how that lawsuit ended up, but the fact that the California State Department was basically in that way siding with Raging Waters, I doubt it went well for the parents. And that is not that article, that info is not on the Wikipedia page. That is not on the Wikipedia page. I just kept looking and looking. We have a ghost story. I don't love it when we find dead kids, but I love it when we find a ghost story that's been very popular and we're able to track it back to a real life event. We've done that recently with a kid who got hit by a car outside of a school, which apparently they now see him in that school. And then we covered that interesting one about the ghost of the girl at this bar in Florida. And the story was she got murdered there. And I couldn't find any articles. And then eventually I found a blog that had one post. And in that post, it said, "Oh, here's the name." I'll put those episodes in the show notes. They're insane. This article goes, "Oh, here's an old newspaper clipping," this blog. "Here's this old newspaper clipping. A woman was stabbed to death while she was on the toilet by a maniac. It was just a random crime. She was sitting in the toilet in the stall, and the guy opened the stall up and stabbed her 3 or 4 times and left, and she bled out." So people did not remember those names. Even this ghost story, they never say it's Sharon Williams, but that is, if it's anyone, it's her. Now, here's the real question about this story. We have a girl who died in Wave Cove. We have ghost stories about a little girl at Wave Cove, and those 2 things aren't connected. No one else was looking this stuff up. If that's included in the hauntedplaces.org, if that's included in the shadowlands.net, it would make that stuff more reliable. You could look it up. But you go, "Jason, maybe it's still an urban legend. You don't want to connect the real death of this child to a haunted story." I guess, I can see that. But here's my question to you. Let's say that it is connected. Let's say that your daughter or your kid died at Wave Cove, and then you heard about these ghost stories. First off, how would that make you feel? Would you feel distressed? Would you feel that it was disrespectful? Maybe, right? I think that'd probably be the go-to thing. But let's take it one step further. Let's say that your daughter died at Wave Cove, and then 20 years later, you just happen to come across the ghost story online, and it doesn't mention her name, but it talks about a little girl ghost. It talks about her by Wave Cove, and talks to security guards and all this stuff. Would you, as a parent, want to go there to talk to her? If you lost a loved one, and then you found out that they were haunting a particular area, and people who never knew her, People who never heard that name, you start reading these ghost stories and they say late at night if you're walking around you can hear her. You can hear the ghost. As a parent, would you want to be there late at night? You might dismiss it all as hogwash, as disrespectful hogwash. But if you didn't, let's say that you don't, you go, oh my God, I want to go there late at night and communicate with my daughter. What if you could just go to the location she died and talk to her spirit there? Would you want to do that? My inclination, I would say yes. I would say yes. I would be like, yeah, I want to go there and talk to my dead daughter. I'm going to hang out. Security guard's chasing me around. I get a job as a security guard. And I go, you know what? I don't believe in ghosts. I want to have a posting at Wave Cove. I want to walk around there. And the boss is like, sure, whatever floats your boat, kid. And then your nights would be you walking around the place where your daughter died, which would be so heartbreaking. Anyways, I doubt this family ever went back to Raging Waters. But now you are back there, and the Wave Cove is still and silent. The night air is crisp. You're in this part of the park all alone. Or are you? You're standing there waiting to hear her voice, waiting for a phone to ring so you can pick it up and say, I love you so much. Would you want to be at the place where one of your loved one's spirit was trapped? It's an interesting question. That's what I was thinking of as I was reading. Once I found out there was a real story, we had these real names, I was thinking like, wow, you probably would want to do that. At the very least, you could, tell her ghost how much you loved her and how much you missed her and all of that stuff. But maybe the most you could actually help her spirit move on. Answer that phone quick enough and go, Daddy loves you, and we miss you so much. But you say that just before that call ends, and after that night, the only thing haunting Raging Waters would be the mysterious force, the evil entity that lurks beneath the water itself. Interesting. I thought that was absolutely fascinating, if not downright depressing. Saul and Riley, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world famous Carpenter Copter. We are leaving behind Raging Waters. Why don't you fly us all the way out to a house in the suburbs? We're about to meet a young boy. Let's go ahead and call him Toby. We don't have his real name. Toby said, we all grew up in a haunted house. It was something that we were kind of used to. I mean, as much as you can get used to a house that sits between the veil. He goes, I grew up in a haunted house. He said, I was about 4 when we moved into this new place, but I had an older brother, younger sister, mommy and daddy. We ended up moving into this house. And he had quite a few strange experiences here. However, let's take a look to see if this is really a ghost. Because I have an idea that this is something far more predatory. Toby goes, right after we moved in, we started to experience things. But it seemed like each person experienced something different. He goes, my mom, for example, would often hear the sound of heavy boots stomping up the stairs. Walking upstairs. Dad, however, didn't hear that. Every so often, my dad would be in the house, and he would leave the house for some reason, let's say going out to the tool shed or something like that, or he walks out to his car to get something out of the glove compartment, and then when he turns back and he goes to get back in the house, he's locked out. And there's no one at home. You're like, that's barely paranormal. That happens to a lot of people. But it does. It does happen to a lot of people. But he thought it was weird. He probably just wanted to be part of the group. Everyone's like, I have a ghost story. And he's like, oh, better think of something quick. I want to be part of the in crowd. Mom would hear heavy footsteps. Dad would often find himself locked outside of the house. He just uses his excuse he's an idiot. He's like, oh, the ghost must have done that. Oh, man, the ghost didn't file my taxes this year. Oh, no, we're getting audited. Oh, it's that bad ghost. Toby's brother would often hear doors opening. It's an interesting quirk because we've covered this thing a lot on this show. Hearing the sounds of doors opening, but the trick is there's no doors open that shouldn't be open. So it's clearly the sound of it. Again, when you step back and think about that, that's way creepier. If you heard the sound of a door opening and you opened your own door and looked out down the hallway and you saw the bathroom door was now open, you'd be like, well, that's weird. That's really weird. But you could go, maybe it was the wind, maybe it was this, that, whatever. You could rationalize it, but if you're sitting in your room and you clearly heard a door open and you looked out and all the doors are closed, you have to wonder what door opened. Was it not a door going from room to room, but a door going from reality to reality? Toby goes, listen, all of that stuff is, pretty creepy. My dad, I don't know about that one, but whatever was in this house, it saved its worst for me. One day, Toby was sitting in his room and he was looked out and he saw his mom leave the house to go to work. And he's watching her, and his mother leaves the house and she's walking towards the car. And that's when he sees, slithering out of the bushes, an 11-foot long pitch black snake. And it slithers out of the bushes and it is following his mom. And Toby's freaking out. Toby has no idea, where did this come from? What's it going to do to my mom? We can make a couple guesses what it might do to my mom, but this large snake is following her, and then she gets in the car, shuts the door, and that's when Toby sees the snake turn around and slither back into the bushes. Toby's mom drives away in her car. Toby turns and looks at the bushes where the snake slithered into. He realizes now that impossibly large snake is staring directly at him. Another time, Toby said, I woke up in the middle of the night and I hear footsteps coming down the hallway. In Toby's bedroom, his television is still on, so there's a little bit of light in his room. He just fell asleep with the television on. He hears these footsteps coming down the hallway. He assumes that his dad must be walking down the hall. Maybe he was up watching television late or something like that. He got locked out of the house again for several hours. Toby's laying in bed. He wakes up. He hears footsteps coming down the hallway, and he goes, oh, my dad. My dad must be walking down the hallway. I'm going to give my dad a big old hug, a late-night hug. Toby gets out of bed, walks to his bedroom door, and opens it up. His father is not walking down the hallway. But he saw what was. Toby opens up the door, and standing right in front of him is an old man who barely looked alive. He looked like a corpse. Decaying old flesh. That's it, right? You don't need any more. I'm trying to think of else to describe him. And his clothes were dusty. You're like, I don't know. The dusty clothes isn't as scary as decaying old flesh. Toby opens the door and sees this decaying old man standing right there. And he goes, the old man was looking right at me. He was staring right at me. That freaked him out, right? That's definitely going to wake you up. He runs past the old man, runs down the hallway to his parents' door, and he's banging on it. He's like, Mom, there's an ugly man in the house. The ghost is all crying. He's like, oh, I'm trapped here forever, and I'm ugly. Well, again, what is this a ghost? We're not done yet. This is a really interesting story. I think it's not a ghost. I think it's something worse. So he goes down to his parents' room and he's banging on the door, and Mom says, he goes, Mom, there's an ugly man in the house. The mom thinks that it's a break-in. She ends up grabbing Toby and begins running around the house, screaming, get out of my house! Get out of my house! She gets a baseball bat. She's turning on all the lights. Get out of my house! And she couldn't find anybody. She couldn't find any old man. He's been in the basement crying. He's like, oh, I'm ugly. Toby continues his story. He goes, one day I'm outside. It's dusk. We're outside playing with my toys while my older brother's throwing around a football, just having fun. And Toby, he had this big T-Rex dinosaur toy. He played with it all the time. Row, I'm going to eat you, tree root. Don't eat me. It's too late. Arr. G.I. Joe will save you. Yo, Joe. Nobody interrupts my root meal. Arr. Save me. He's playing with all of his toys. He has his giant dinosaur, all of his other assorted goodies out there. Boys, it's time for dinner. He hears his mom say in the house. She's still gripping that baseball bat. She's cooking dinner with one hand. Come on, boys. Time to come inside. It's supper time. And so Toby and his brother, they run inside. And Toby's like, oh, dude, I'm so hungry, man. I hope we get some of that mac and cheese. Or maybe even better, shells and cheese. And then he realizes he left his dinosaur outside. So he's like, oh, man, I need to get my toy. Who else is going to eat the roots? I gotta have this big giant dinosaur toy. So he goes out. He's outside, and he goes, it's so dark at this point. He goes, I'm looking around. He goes, I couldn't see colors. It's getting that dark. He goes, I could just see shapes. I can see outlines of things. And that's when I see that there's my T-Rex, and he's right next to the tree that I was playing at. So it's perfect. So he runs over to that tree and he grabs onto that dinosaur and it crumbles. He's looking down at his hands and they're full of dirt. There was, next to that tree, a shape of his dinosaur toy, a shape of his T-Rex, but it was made of dirt. His T-Rex was nowhere to be seen. This, though, stood in its place. He immediately ran back inside. I mean, this story has a absolutely bizarre ending to it. But before we get there, I kind of want to talk a little bit about what we've experienced. In a vacuum, these, or a couple of them definitely seem like a traditional haunting. Footsteps, 100%. A ghost can be heard long before they could ever be seen. Hearing things that are caused by spirits seems to be one of the most common. Definitely more common than actually seeing a ghost. Where it doesn't become ghost-like, where you start to think that there is a darker force, are things like the trap, the lure, right? You have this toy dinosaur. He never said if he ever found his dinosaur, by the way, but he had this toy dinosaur, and he went out there to get it, and it was just dirt shaped in the form of the dinosaur, as if it wanted to lure him to that particular place. And when he went to grab it, it was nothing. It was a trap. The footsteps down the hallway and thinking it's his dad, that's typical ghost stuff, opening the door. Even seeing the old man, you could go, well, you know, there are a lot of old people ghosts. You're right. That is in that sense. But the 11-foot long black snake sliding on its belly in the driveway, that is not ghost related. That we actually think, we've talked about it a lot on this show, that could be something known as a solar plexus clown glider. In regular parlance, a energy vampire. These things attach themselves to human and lead them down dark paths because it can feed off their misery. It could have been something like that. A ghostly house that is haunted. Sometimes we will have human ghosts and animal ghosts in the same location. A ghost of a hellhound, something like that, as along with the ghost of this caretaker, or a white horse ghost on a field, and then a handyman who died there. But I do think there's something more sinister at foot here. The snake is most likely connected to it. Obviously, that wasn't just the spirit snake passing through the area. But I do think it was trying to trap Toby. I do think it was trying to do something to Toby specifically, because he goes, I got the worst of it. No one else was experiencing stuff like I did. You go, Jason, okay, so let's put on a conspiracy caps then. And if this was an interdimensional entity or something more than a ghost, demonic, soul-sucking energy vampire, something we don't even know about, a phenomenon we don't even know about, what was its goal? Like, obviously, Toby's all right. I mean, he's posting this stuff online. He hasn't been completely overtaken by the evil. Well, this is the thing. He did post this online underneath the name Overall Disaster 4224. He does end it with saying, this T-Rex, it felt like something was luring me to that area and it tricked me and I ran away scared. But other than that, other than these horrific events, it really hasn't had any impact on his life, or has it? Did this entity want to take over Toby, and did it succeed? Toby remembered all of these things that happened to him growing up, but later in life, his dad told Toby, hey, remember that house we lived in that I kept getting locked out of? Wasn't that spooky? Wasn't that spooky? Toby's he's all sweating all the time whenever someone brings up the house. Man, I can never believe that I got locked out of the house so many times. Toby's like, yeah, I remember that. Toby's dad's like, well, there was also something else going on. Do you remember all this stuff with you just like being weird, being a big old weirdo? Toby's like, what? And dad's like, yeah, there were so many times you acted so weird in that house. His dad goes, there would be times where I would walk in to a room and you would just be sitting in the corner of the room. You weren't doing anything, you were just sitting there. Toby's dad was like, yeah, it was super weird. It's creeping me out, honestly. Sometimes, too, I'd walk into a room and he'd be sitting in front of the TV, which is nothing new, right? We all love a little bit of television, but you wouldn't even have the television on. You would just be sitting there in front of a television that was turned off, just staring at it. And when you were doing that, thought it was weird. One day I go, hey, Toby, why are you doing that? Why are you sitting in front of the television not watching anything? And whenever I asked you that question, the answer was always the same. The old man told me to. Toby would say. The old man told me to. Toby swears he doesn't remember any of that, but his dad does. Dad goes, it happened multiple times. So whatever this old man's game was, demonic, interdimensional, who knows what, maybe a ghost, maybe an extremely powerful ghost. Whatever its goals were, it sounds like it worked. It sounds like he did have influence over this child. And, maybe Toby has a totally normal life. Maybe he's not a blood-sucking freak from beyond. But it doesn't always have to be that drastic. That old man may have just wanted to have power over him. That old man may have wanted to possess him. We don't know. But whatever the old man was doing to Toby worked. And it worked so well that Toby doesn't even remember those parts of his life. So you have to wonder how many bizarre events Toby had that he doesn't remember. The only reason he knows this is because there was a third party who told him about. So now, decades later, Toby can go, wow, I grew up in a haunted house, and he can post this online and go, isn't that a crazy story? And he hits send. Then he shuts his computer off and just stares at the blank monitor in front of him. He just sits there for a couple minutes. Because that's what the old man told him to do. And then he gets up, walks into the bathroom. No recollection of that. To him, only a second had passed. But this old man, this decaying corpse, has control over him even to this day. Can still wipe his mind in an instant. Can still make Toby do whatever he wants. Toby says, I used to live in a haunted house. But I don't think he ever truly left. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be your email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day.